Hey y'all, did you know that according to cognitive behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral theory, that it's not really what happens to us or what's happening in our life that causes us emotional distress or frustration or angst or upset or depression or any of those negative emotions? It's actually It's actually how we think about what's happening in our life that affects us. For example, it's not really failing a test that makes us upset or depressed. It's our thinking about failing the test. So if we're thinking, I am a failure, or my life is doomed, or I'm not as smart as the next person, that's what actually caused us the emotional distress. How does that same concept impact us in our relationships, specifically with our husbands? Well, if you're thinking negative thoughts about your husband, you're going to automatically feel negative feelings about your husband. And so today I want to talk to you about the importance of cognitive reframing. Now, that's just a fancy word for choosing to think positively instead of negatively, because there are emotional consequences to the way we think about things, especially the way we think about people. And since you sort of committed to do life till death do you part, for better or for worse, you may as well do it with the best emotions you can possibly get. And I want to tell you, you have control over what emotions you feel to at least some extent. Now, emotions are important. They carry information, but sometimes we need to challenge our emotions. And there's another fancy term that we use when we're talking about challenging those emotions, and we call it challenging the cognitive distortion. A cognitive distortion is simply a faulty way of thinking, a flawed way of thinking, or in layman's term, just thinking negatively, thinking wrongly, okay? How do you do that when it comes to a person? You may say, well, the person actually is making me upset with their negative behavior, negative personality traits. Well, challenge that. Is it actually that their behavior and their traits are so bad? Or is it that your thoughts about their behavior and their traits are so bad? I want you to try to do something the next time you think a negative thought about your spouse. I want you to ask yourself, by challenging the thought, is that the only way to see this? So for example, if you are seeing your spouse as bossy, is that the only way to see him? Maybe a better reframe for bossy would be, he's goal oriented. He has his mind on the goal and he wants to see it done. You know, goal oriented and goal minded is a lot more gentle on our emotions than bossy, okay? How about clingy? Maybe you have a spouse that you're trying to figure out, why are you always up under me? You're so clingy. I need space. And that can create very negative emotions towards your spouse. Well, maybe if you reframe it from he's so clingy to he's just very affectionate, it could change your emotions about it. Sure, you might still need to establish some healthy boundaries for personal space and personal time, even in the context of marriage, but the thought, my husband is very affectionate, is a lot more pleasant than my husband's just too clingy. Let's try another one. How about lazy? That's a common complaint of women. What's another way you can think about your spouse instead of, you're so lazy? Think about it. I'm gonna give you a second. Have you come up with anything? How about you? When you are feeling lazy, how do you think about you? Are you actually judging yourself? Some of us need a little more self-compassion. Some of us are just as hard on ourselves as we are on others. Well, instead of thinking he's so lazy, or even I'm so lazy, how about I'm taking a rest? I'm casual. I'm carefree, right? This could be a personality trait that someone is, generally speaking, a pretty casual, carefree. They don't feel a lot of pressure to always be doing and going and being and achieving. They're just casual and carefree. Once again, maybe there's some modifications and some interventions that need to be established for getting them to be a little less carefree. But to think of your spouse as carefree or casual is a lot more pleasant than he's just lazy or irresponsible. Let's do one more. What about stubborn? If you think of of your spouse is being stubborn, I'm sure that a quick thought of reframing that could actually change your emotions. A person who's stubborn is usually pretty determined about what they want. Thinking of them as determined instead of stubborn is a lot more pleasant. And you know, the way we think impacts our emotional state, and your emotions actually make for the quality of your life. If you are, generally speaking, a fairly happy, contented person, it really doesn't matter a whole lot what you have or don't have, what you've achieved and haven't achieved, because for the most part, you've experienced and you've achieved what most people are out here striving to achieve by going and doing and getting and obtaining. You've achieved satisfaction, contentment. That's the goal. We want to have the best quality of life that we can, and we absolutely want to have the best quality in our relationship. It's not about the quantity of years you spend together. It's about the quality. So the next time you have a negative thought about your husband that is really, you're ruminating on it, you just can't get over it, challenge it. Ask yourself, is there another way to see this? And I'll give you a few helpful tips. Number one, ask yourself, is this positive or is it negative? Try to avoid judgment in your assessments of your spouse. Instead, try to be as realistic and factual as possible. A lot of times we add the connotation to what it is that we are observing. You get to decide, am I going to choose to view this negatively, or am I going to choose to find a way to see it more positively, or at least more neutrally? And here's one more tip for how to cognitively reframe. It's not only thinking more positively, sometimes it's thinking more realistically. Sometimes our expectations of people and demands of people are just way too high. Maybe you need to relax your expectations and demands. Maybe you need to extend a little more grace, because that'll help you to see them a little more gently and deal with them a little more graciously. I hope this helped. Let me know what you think. God bless you.